As we get ready for Thanksgiving, I'm making dishes ahead of time and testing out recipes so the holiday feels peaceful, cozy, and delicious later. This week, I'm making tender, buttery crescent rolls you can freeze and bake fresh on the big day, my homemade cranberry sauce that's perfect for canning. Additionally, Cam is cooking up his specialty, a brined and smoked turkey, and we're making pie dough to freeze, so dessert is stress-free, and baking 2 incredible fruit pies. If you love simple, from-scratch ingredients, homegrown food, and a slower pace leading up to Thanksgiving, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. We're going to start out by making crescent rolls. These are a wonderful make-ahead side dish because they freeze so well, and you can bake them up the day of Thanksgiving, and all of that work is already done. The other great thing about these is they taste so much better than what you can find at the store, but they do take quite a bit of time with refrigeration in between layers, so it is great to make these ahead of time and just have all of that work already done and ready to go for Thanksgiving or for any meal for that matter. So this recipe says to cut in the butter the old-fashioned way using 2 knives. And then I decided it was taking a little too long and I'm not quite patient enough for that. So I'm gonna put it in my food processor and let that cut the butter for me. The only thing is when using a food processor or any type of machine, to make sure that the butter doesn't melt. That's the big thing when making pastry things with butter in them, is you don't want the butter to melt. So I'm going to be really careful and just pulse it a couple of times and make sure that the butter doesn't get too melted or too small or any of that stuff. Everything was going really well until I dumped in the milk and realized that I dumped in 2 cups of milk and I only needed 1 cup of milk. And I didn't notice until I stirred everything together and it was way too wet of a dough. So now to fix it, I am going to add more flour, butter, yeast mixture to this, so it will become a quadruple batch instead. I have spent many years trying to find a really good dinner roll recipe. And there are a lot of good recipes out there, but every time I make them, I am not satisfied. And I finally figured it out. I don't really love regular dinner rolls. So we have some friends of ours that make crescent rolls every time that we have gone to their house for either Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve, and they are always so delicious and I like them. I love that they are lighter, they're not as dense, they're easier to eat, and they already have butter in them, so they taste a lot better. So that is why I chose to make them this Thanksgiving. I finished folding the dough into lots of different layers, and then I was supposed to put it in the refrigerator for a half an hour. I did put it in the refrigerator, but it's been there for a lot longer than a half an hour. It's probably been there for maybe close to 2 hours, so it did rise a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't cause a problem. I don't think it will. And now I am ready to make these into individual rolls. Since I'm making a quadruple batch, I need to break the dough into 12 pieces before I roll it out. So we're gonna scratch what I just did. I am following this recipe that I just found online, and it has really good reviews, and I really don't like the way that she's rolling out the dough. It's very frustrating to me. So I'm going to roll it out in 1 big sheet, well, probably 2 since I have so much dough here, and then cut it from there, because rolling it out just a little bit at a time is having a lot of waste there and it's taking me a lot of time. So I think just rolling it out all at once is going to be easier. It's a good thing I messed up in the beginning and made a big quadruple batch of these crescent rolls, because it's taking a lot of testing to figure out what's working and what's not working. And here is one tray that we have so far. We learned that it's really important to measure everything out, otherwise you get all different variable sizes. And then of course, when you cook them in the oven, then some are going to cook too much, some not enough, so it's good to have them all uniform. So I'm going to take this first batch and put it in the freezer and then let them freeze completely, and then I will vacuum seal them. And then when it's time to use them, we'll put them back on the baking pans. They will rise from there. They're supposed to double in size, and then we will cook them. I left out some of these just to do a little test batch, as they are before we freeze them. After a few days, the rolls were completely frozen. They were actually probably frozen after 24 hours, but I just didn't get around to vacuum sealing them until 2 days later. So I took them all out of the freezer. I decided to just cut out the parchment paper and slide them into the vacuum seal bag to kind of make it a little bit easier, because I wanted them to be laying the same way that they were when I made them, so that the edge that is supposed to be tucked under stays like that. And I did a couple of them that way, and then I tried one without the parchment paper, and it actually didn't really take that much longer. So this will help to avoid freezer burn until we take them out for Thanksgiving, thaw them, let them rise, and bake and eat them. My favorite dish for Thanksgiving is cranberry sauce. So a couple of years ago, I couldn't find a cranberry sauce recipe that I liked, so I came up with my own. And this one is safe for canning, so that's what I'm going to be making today. So to get started with that, I need to make some apple juice or apple cider to go in it. It gives it a lot of extra flavor rather than using just water. I have some more apples, so I don't have to tap into the ones that I already made. I'm just going to use these fresh apples and use our juicer to make that. We finished up juicing the apples. Now we're ready to put in the ingredients for the cranberry sauce. I have 2 pots out here because I'm making a double batch. And when you are making a recipe that needs to reach the gel stage and you're doubling, you're better off splitting it into 2 pots. It's a lot easier that way rather than just putting everything in one pot like the double batch and trying to get it to gel or set. It's a lot harder. So I always just keep it in 2 pots to make my life easier. I've got the cranberries, apple juice, and water simmering in the pot. I brought that to a boil, and then once it's at a boil, you turn it down to a simmer and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. So while that's going, I am going to assemble my sauce maker. I just got this a little while ago and it's awesome. So I'm gonna use it for this. The other option is you can use an immersion blender to puree everything together with the seeds and the skins. I have never been able to get the seeds and the skins of cranberries small enough that it doesn't bother me in the sauce. So I just go ahead and put it through the sauce maker. But I just wanted to mention that as another option if you don't have a sauce maker, or if you just want to keep it all in one pot, that is a possibility to use the immersion blender. A regular blender will also work. We got all the cranberries run through the sauce maker. I did notice that the seeds were able to come through in the sauce. They didn't get taken out. They're too tiny. The sauce maker is meant for tomatoes, so the tomato seeds, they go out. But these little tiny cranberry seeds, they're still in the sauce. But at least we got the skins out, which is the part I really don't like. I put the sugar in with the cranberry sauce. Now we're ready to bring everything to a boil and get it to the gel stage. And once the sugar is dissolved, then you want to keep stirring that, and then once it's boiling, while you're still stirring, then you want to set the timer for 10 minutes and just keep stirring and boiling and stirring and boiling. And after 10 minutes, you turn it off, check to see if you've reached that gel stage. There is a lot of different methods you can use to check. My favorite is just to see if the top of the cranberry sauce wrinkles. And if it's wrinkling, then usually that's a really good sign. It is a very messy job, and it splashed up like all over my backsplash here. It was all over the floor. It's all over my apron. I've got the wrong color on today, but it's done. So we're gonna can it now. The final step is to add some orange zest. The important thing when adding this or making the zest is that you really only want to get the orange part of the orange. Do not go down and get any of the white parts. That will ruin the flavor and make it so bitter. I just wanted to mention that because I had asked Cam to zest a couple oranges for me and he did not know that. So he zested all of the orange part and all the white part off the oranges and gave me a big pile of it. And so luckily we had some more oranges and we just kind of redid it. I only add a couple teaspoons of the orange zest and it makes a big impact on the flavor. So with the orange zest all stirred in, we were ready to ladle the hot cranberry sauce into hot jars. I put the lids and rings on and then I processed those for about 15 minutes. And you want to add any extra time you need for a higher altitude. And then once that is done, I turn the heat off and let the jars sit in the canner for another 5 to 10 minutes. And then I remove them from the canner and let them cool on the counter. And it's important that you let them sit for at least 24 hours at room temperature so that that gel can set properly. And then I test the seals and store them.
Okay, it's officially November and I have some turkeys behind me that are going to help me with some dinner prep. The turkeys are harvested and they've been chilling in the fridge overnight, so now it's time to make the brine. So for that, I'm going to be using the Redmond Real Salt Turkey Brine Kit. Everything is already pre-mixed. The sea salt, coconut sugar, citrus peel, and herbs to give you that perfect balance of salty, sweet, and aromatic without any guesswork. And it makes your meat tender and flavorful in every single bite. Noelle, can I borrow you for a second? I need you to hold this bag up and we need to get a turkey in the bag. Here, let's do it this way. I'll hold the turkey, you put the bag over that, and then we'll flip it. That way you can touch it as little as you want. Now, voila. Hey, thank you. Ah! Okay, the brine smells really good, so if that's any indicator of how good this turkey's gonna taste, then I think we're in for a treat. Got the brine and the turkey back in the fridge, so that's gonna chill there for another 24 hours, and then we'll get it on the smoker. I used to think that all table salts were the same until I started using Redmond Real Salt. This is not your typical table salt. It's unrefined sea salt mined in Utah from an ancient seabed that has been protected from modern pollution. There's nothing added, nothing taken away, just pure natural salt, full of trace minerals that your body actually needs to stay balanced. When we first started using Redmond salts at our house, I was thrilled to find out that they have a whole line of seasoning salts, flavored salts, and other things that you can use in cooking. We use these all the time to make our already delicious dinners taste even better. Take meals from good to great by adding Redmond Real Salt to your dinner table. Check our link in the video description to see how you can get some for yourself. The turkey has been in the brine for 24 hours, so it's time to get it on the smoker. Before I take it to the smoker, I'm going to spatchcock, or some people say butterfly, the meat. I ate lunch with a famous pit master a few years ago, and he had spatchcocked and smoked some chickens. That was the most amazing chicken that I've ever eaten. So I did our Thanksgiving turkey the same way that year, and likewise it turned out amazing, so I've done it that way ever since. When you cook it that way, it allows for a faster cook, a more even cook, and it retains more of the moisture too. And then when it comes time to carve it up, the meat just falls off the bone and it's so easy to plate and start eating. It's already brined, but I still like to add a little bit more seasoning on the skin just to enhance the flavor that much more. Okay, this thing's all ready to put on the smoker. I want to just say we've realized over the years, even for our large family, we prefer cooking 2 or even 3 smaller turkeys. They're just easier to manage, easier to work with, cut up, and they cook quicker, and it offers more of a selection for whatever anybody wants to eat.
Once the internal temperature of the turkey hit 165 degrees Fahrenheit, Cam took it off the smoker and let it sit for a few minutes, and then he carved it up. We ate it for dinner that night, and it was moist, tender, and full of sweet, smoky, and salty flavors. Cam definitely outdid himself, so we are looking forward to making another for Thanksgiving. We served it with our homegrown butternut squash, and we popped open a jar of our homemade cranberry sauce that we had just made, and it was all so delicious. One of the best things to make ahead for Thanksgiving is pie dough or pie crust. The other thing that you can do is you can assemble full-on pies and then just have them ready to go in your freezer when Thanksgiving comes around. What I'm going to be doing today is I am just going to be making a bunch of pie dough, and I'm also testing out a couple of pie recipes that I am in the process of developing, and I want to make sure that they actually taste good before Thanksgiving comes around. So that's why I'm testing them today. So I'm actually not a huge fan of pies, or at least I didn't think I was until I went to a local restaurant that serves the best pies. And I tried a couple of their pies, and every one of them was so good that it converted me to actually realizing that pies can taste good if they're made the right way. So that's why I'm working on some of these recipes, because I want to match some of the things that I tasted at that restaurant. One of the pies that I love from there is called Bumblebee pie. It's a mixed berry pie, and I'm gonna try and make that today at home. And the other thing that I'm gonna make is a Dutch apple pie. What makes a really good pie crust is having the correct technique. It is not so much about the ingredients, but how you make it. There are lots of different methods to making pie crust, and my favorite is using our mixer. So I cut butter into about 1/2 inch cubes. So it's important to have everything cold. I start out with refrigerated butter, cut that into the cubes, and then I put it back into the refrigerator. Then I mixed together the flour, sugar, and salt in a separate bowl. Then I had my mixer bowl in the freezer, took that out of the freezer. I poured in the flour mixture and then the butter, and then I mixed it just a little bit. It's really just to break apart the butter a tiny bit. You still want everything to still be cold, a little bit chunky, and it's better to underdo it than overdo it. That's the big thing with making pie, is you don't want to overwork the dough. Yesterday when I made the pie dough, I weighed it all on the scale and divided that number by 4 so I could have 4 perfectly sized pie crusts. And then I formed them into dough balls, smashed them down into about a 6-inch circle, wrap them in parchment paper, and then I put 3 of those in one bag in the refrigerator, and the other one I'm not going to be using to test out any of these pie recipes today. That one went in the freezer, and we'll use that for Thanksgiving. We will definitely make some more pie dough in the next couple of days so that we have some already ready for Thanksgiving. So now I'm working on rolling out these pie crusts. After I'm finished with them, they're going to go back in the refrigerator until I am ready to put the pie filling in, and then we will assemble everything. So to make the filling for this Bumblebee pie, I started by mixing water, sugar, cornstarch, and salt together in a saucepan. And then you bring that to a simmer and you stir it until it's thickened. Then I removed it from the heat and I stirred in some lemon juice and I folded in the mixed berries. At this point, it would have been really good to add some lemon zest, but I didn't realize until later that this pie really needed some lemon zest because I was actually developing the recipe as I was going along, and I felt like the mixed berry filling really needed something, and adding the lemon zest just put it over the top. It was so good, but I had already added the filling to the pie, so I just kind of added it over the top and stirred it as best I could while it was already in the pie crust. So once that was done, I took out a second unbaked pie crust for the top, and I wanted to do a lattice top to this pie. So we have this big pizza cutter, and it worked perfectly for making very straight lines for the lattice. So to make the lattice pie crust, I cut that whole pie crust into 12 strips, and they are about 3/4 inches wide, and I place 6 evenly spaced across the top of the pie horizontally. Then you fold back every other strip and lay 1 strip vertically, and then you put the horizontal strips back into place, fold back the other strips that had not been folded back the first time, lay a second vertical strip, and then repeat this process all the way across. Then I pinch the edges together. And then after that, I stirred up an egg with about a teaspoon of water and mixed that up for an egg wash. And then I sprinkled the top with sugar. Once that was all done, I put that in my oven, which was already preheated. I cooked this at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 to 50 minutes. we've got our Bumblebee pie in the oven, and now it's time to switch gears and get started on the apple pie. I'm going to make a Dutch apple pie. So I just went outside and grabbed a bunch of apples, and I have two types of apples. I'm doing half Golden Delicious and half Evercrisp. They're both varieties that I got locally. So I just really wanted to test these out and see how they do in apple pie. So I'm gonna get started on this by peeling and coring these apples, and I'm just gonna use my apple peeler core slicer for this to make things a little bit easier. The Bumblebee pie finished and it smelled so good. I really wanted to try some, but I wanted to wait for it to cool just a little bit before I sliced a piece. In the meantime, I kept working on this apple pie. So I worked on making the filling first by melting some butter. Then I mixed cornstarch with water and poured that in. Then I added sugar, salt, and cinnamon. Then I brought that to a simmer, let it thicken, took it off the heat, added some lemon juice and the apples. After that was finished, I worked on making the crumble topping. I added flour, sugar, brown sugar, salt, and pecans into a bowl. Then I melted some butter and I put about a teaspoon of vanilla in the butter, mixed that up, poured it all together, and made it into little crumbles to go on top of the pie. Once that was all finished, I was ready to assemble the pie. So I put another pie crust in my pie pan. And I really love deep dish pies, but I don't have a deep dish pie pan. So I stuff my pie super full. And with apple pies, they always bake down a lot too. So even though this looks incredibly tall, it does bake down some. And I made a little mental note that I need to get a deep dish pie pan before Thanksgiving comes around. Once I was finished assembling the apple pie, it was getting really late at night. So we already had one pie baked and ready to eat. So I tested the Bumblebee pie and I took that apple pie and I put it in the refrigerator, and then I decided to go ahead and cook it the next day. So the Bumblebee pie disappeared super fast and the apple pie did not take much longer. So they were both a big hit at our house. My taste tester said that the apple pie was a little bit on the sweet side. So I'm going to take it down a notch and then remake this one more time before Thanksgiving. Everything we made today brings us one step closer to a calmer, more meaningful Thanksgiving. One where the kitchen feels joyful, not rushed. I hope this inspires you to prepare a little ahead and savor the season. Thanks for spending time with us here on our homestead. And during this season of gratitude, we want to express how grateful we are for each of you watching. See you all in the next video.